If you're a fan of Final Fantasy VIII's Triple Triad or Final Fantasy IX's Tetra Master, then you'll probably feel right at home with Tetra Tactics. This takes those two card games from the Final Fantasy games, combines them into a roguelike deck building RPG, and adds in some extra elements to make it feel extra fighty and battle-y. But fundamentally, you are playing a card game in a 4x4 grid trying to lay down cards to overpower your opponent. If they beat you, you get chipped away at your character's health. If you take a few too many beatings, it will be game over and your run will be ended. Each game starts off with you choosing a character, and there's loads to unlock and choose from over the course of the game, and they have their own specific starter deck. And each of their cards will have a character or an animal or a beast inside it. But really, what you're looking at here is the 4 symbols or numbers at the card's edges. Most of the cards will start off with numbers between 0 and 9, 0 being the least powerful and 9 being the most. And in a simple play of cards, if your opponent put down cards where every side has got a 1 on, and then you laid one of your cards next to it and it's got a 2 or higher, that card would overpower the side that it's matching and flip the opponent's card onto your colour, and you would now have control of it. The beauty of this is that you can then strategically start laying down cards to create combo attacks, and that's where you can take over 2 sides at once. And when you do that, it causes a chain flood reaction where those cards are so charged up and powerful, they might be able to flip over the next opponent card if it can also beat it along the way. This is really how the game flow happens, because after one player lays down a card, the opponent does, and vice versa, across this 4x4 16 space grid. Not every map will have all 16 spaces clear. There'll be blocks in and around to make strategic funnels or corridors or little nooks and crannies for you to get around. And that also plays into the 4 additional symbols that can appear on a card to make them feel unique. Swords are an icon that rank as a number 10 basically. They trump all of the numbers and are the biggest, strongest attack that's out there. Shields, though, can't be captured at all, and so they can riposte that sword attack and any number. The problem with a shield, though, is that it can't capture anything else, so it's really good for a defensive rebuttal, but not very good at marching forward on the attack. Magic cards can capture anything except the shield, but it can be captured by any attack from 1 upwards, basically, so it can be really overpowered by the smallest little prod. However, it can be great if you've got lots of opponents with big numbers and you need to try and break through their ranks. The real complicated one is the bow, because that's a ranged attack card, and so it can't deal with or attack or defend anything that's placed next to it. But if anything's the range of 2 cards away, it can attack that in the row, again except for a shield. And so that can be really useful to attack something a couple of cards away, and again flip over something that's quite high in numbers that you might not be able to get to with, say, if you didn't have a magic card, you had a bow card instead. With those 4 additional symbols placed into battle alongside the numbers, you do get some surprising strategic depth. It's a bit like noughts and crosses, the extreme version, but because you've got 4 different directions to think about, plus these additional overpowered or ranged attacks that will pop in usually quite quickly in a run as you start to come across opponents that have got beefier cards than you have, you really have to think about that strategic outmaneuvering. And the computer is quite clever often about how well it places down things, particularly from World 3 onwards. And you go through multiple worlds, picking up different cards, adding on additional abilities to your characters, which I'll come on to in a second, but also gaining XP, not just for your characters and for the meta progression of the game, but for your actual cards too. So, what does that mean? When you aren't playing on the actual playing field itself, As you go through the overarching map and choosing whether you're going to go into battles or whether you're going to go to a shop to buy some additional upgrades for your cards, potentially some new cards or some items for your bag, such as reviving some of your health or something like that, you can also go into a forge to augment your cards as well. And what this means is that you can buy upgrades to the numbers, for example. And so instead of them just being like a 4, they could become a 7. But it could also be that you can add status effects or special abilities to some of those numbers too. And you'll see these with cards that have got numbers but a pretty pattern around the edge of them. Some examples of this could be the knockback effect, where if you've defended a card and successfully with that number, with that symbol around it, it will push the card away from you and create a gap in between, which could be quite nice to then like slot in another card and then be like, haha, captured. There's another one where you can capture the attacker after successfully blocking. So it's basically like a riposte back, and that can be incredibly powerful too. There's loads of different varieties of these, and the real strength really of Tetra Tactics is that it starts off feeling like a very minute and succinct game experience, and it kind of is its basic rules, but there's so many ink pellets of tactics that bleed out from those very basic ideas that the devil's in the detail, really, in how you start augmenting your cards. Those augments carry over from run to run because the cards themselves level up through XP too. So as they get better and better, their numbers get bigger and bigger, and you'll start to put on status effects. Your character too, over multiple runs, will be able to add on additional health, or it might be that they come with more cards on, or their backpack that can contain additional items such as being able to blind you for a little bit, or stop you from using one of your 2 additional abilities that could be things like temporarily add on 4 to all of your card numbers for the next turn or something like that. You can boost up those and be able to use them more frequently by reducing the cooldown between use, for example. There's lots of different things that you can add so that it makes you more powerful each run, and you'll need all of those upgrades too. And that's because when you get to the end of each world map, before you move on to the next area, there's always a big chonky boss battle to have. Those bosses always come with special skills, and invariably they're things like every time the opponent makes a move, reduce down one of your cards numbers by 1, and then you're like, oh no. And then the next time around it'll be like, reduce down 3 numbers by 1, and then you're going, no, because even though it's randomized, air quote, it always seems to be the cards that are in the middle of this board, in play, exposed, ready for that kind of combo hit that then causes a chain reaction to lose all of your cards. And you're just thinking, no, as you watch it all go horribly wrong. So in order to mitigate that, you will have to do multiple runs, invest in augment and upgrade your cards so that you then have the numbers above or alongside the boss to be able to survive all of their horrible augmenty attacks. In order to help you, then when you move on to the next world, whenever you kill a boss, you get a relic. And these relics aren't very well explained, but invariably they're kind of a more positive version of what the bosses do to you. So it could be that every time an enemy card is captured, you then get to +1 on a number of your deck at random, for example. So it's almost like a yin to their yang. But there's loads of these different relics. They'll be randomized each time you play, and they don't carry over from run to run. So good and very useful for the run that you're in. Just don't get too attached to them because they won't be there in the future. I really enjoyed Tetra Tactics. I've kind of bounced around all of the different mechanics very lightly, but the overarching theme and takeaway for me is all around the customization of your deck and the permanent choices that you make along the way. Because when a card levels up or you augment it, that augment stays forever. And so you're choosing how to mould a deck over multiple runs for each of your characters. And I just think that's really cool that you start off with a card at the beginning of the game that's got like really tiny numbers. 3-4 hours in, their stats are now increased, but they'll have like little seals and markers around those numbers showing the different additional elements that you've brought to that card. Or they might be swapped out for symbols entirely, and they might have a bow and a shield and a sword on instead. It's really up to you, and I really like that idea. The other thing is that this game has an incredibly simple rule set, but from all of that augmentation and customization, ink pellets of ideas and different tactics start to bleed out in a way that is really quite deceptive, because when you look at this you just kind of go, oh, I'm just laying down some cards, it's going to be like Uno crossed with noughts and crosses and that'll be fine. But there's an awful lot to appreciate here that I don't think reveals itself, certainly not within the first hour or two of playing this game. It's as you go deeper into the game, you start to go, okay, I'm thinking much more about my choices now because they're going to affect every run going forward from here. And that's only a good thing to have. So yeah, Tetra Tactics, pleasantly surprised with this one. It might not be the most beautifully and cohesively aesthetically pleasing game that's out there, but the devil's in the gameplay detail, and that's what's really nailed here. So Tetra Tactics, thumbs up. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/higherplane network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.